Welcome, everybody, to the Strange and Scary Mysteries of the Month, where we find you some of the craziest true crime stories happening all around the world and lay them out for you to wrap your head around. Thanks so much for tuning in. Here are the Strange and Scary Mysteries of the Month for August 2024. Number 5. The Marian County Monster. Ohio. The heartland of America, filled with rolling fields, friendly faces, and some white picket fences. But of course, no place is as perfect as it appears. Beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic state, the monster in normal people's clothing was waiting for his chance to strike. His name was Swan. For over a decade, he cultivated a facade so convincing, it would leave all those who knew him in a state of shock. Born August 8th of 1976 in the town of Marian, Swan appeared just like any other kid. He played ball, had his core group of friends, and presented a smile that would lead you to believe he was as happy as can be. While teachers noticed from an early age some learning difficulties for the boy, there was nothing that screamed future serial killer. This mask would continue well into adulthood, but as time passed, some cracks began to show. His home life saw his parents divorcing when he was 6, and his mother then abandoning the family to live with a man in Kentucky. And this had a profound effect on Swan. Sometimes he would go into these dark states of depression for days on end, as friends had witnessed. But because he would always end up snapping out of them and go back to being normal, well, no one thought it was anything to worry about. But inside Swan, there was a darkness that festered. In 2006, it began to seep out into the real world. In that year, Stacy Stanley, a vibrant young woman, vanished without a trace. Months later, Elizabeth Griffith met the same fate. Both women seemingly swallowed whole by thin air. The small town of Marian and Mansfield were on edge, but try as they might, the police had nothing. No leads, no connection, just chilling silence. It would take more than a decade, but finally, a break in the case came in 2016 when a call came into the police from a girl who has only been identified as Jane Doe to the public.
911, what is the address to your emergency?
By the Fourth Street Laundromat.
What is it?
Fourth Street Laundromat.
What's the problem?
I've been assaulted.
But you're at the laundromat?
No, I'm in the bedroom with them.
Bruised and battered, she then told police that she and Swan had been platonic friends and that they had bonded over the Bible. But 3 days prior to her frantic call, he had asked her to help him move something at his home, to which she agreed, and once inside, his demeanor changed drastically. His smile dropped, and he tied her up and did some very bad things to the poor woman. A search of the property would then go on to reveal a horrific discovery. And inside the Ashland home were 2 other bodies, those of Stanley and Griffith from back in 2006. With no place to hide, police pressed Swan about what else he had done, and hoping to catch a break in his sentencing. On the very same day he was arrested, he led police to an old, burned-out home where behind it, he showed them the buried remains of another woman, Candace Cunningham, his former girlfriend. And so just like that, in the blink of an eye, the facade shattered. And the friendly neighbor and that charming smile were all just a mask. Great would go on to confess to not just the 3 murders, but 5 in total, all young women lured by his disarming demeanor, only to meet a violent end. Great wasn't someone you'd ever suspect. He wasn't scary looking or a social outcast. He was just the guy next door. As for motive, he claimed that because all his victims had been on government assistance, that the powers to be had taken their minds away and that they were already dead. He saw them as zombies and that he just did them a favor by putting them out of their misery.
I hope we could just move on from all this. I can't say I'm normal. I know right from wrong. If I cause any hate, bitterness, and then all of any of it, I ask you maybe forgive me. Find in your heart someday. I know not today, someday.
Great is scheduled to be executed on March 19th, 2025. Number 4. California Dreamin' turned nightmare. In 2001, amidst the palm trees and million-dollar mansions over in Cali, the 41-year-old Jana Koklich quietly vanished without a trace. She had a successful career in real estate where she worked together in it with her husband Bruce of 11 years. They shared a beautiful home right on a golf course and a life most would envy. But looking back just before her disappearance, some people thought she had been acting out of sorts. And friends noticed Jana canceling social plans, which was a shift in her usual bubbly personality. And so, was something perhaps going on behind closed doors that she had been keeping hidden? On Friday, August 17th of 2001, Jana attended an Eric Clapton concert and got home around midnight, according to Bruce. They then spent the weekend just kicking back and relaxing at home. By Monday, Bruce kissed his wife goodbye and headed to the office where she would meet him later, but she never got there. Later on that day, Bruce called police to report his wife missing, and that's when things got interesting. The detectives found out that Jana had missed her scheduled workout with her personal trainer of 2 years on that Saturday morning, something she had never done before and was never late for. And later on that afternoon, she again missed a massage appointment. When asked why this happened, Bruce just said they decided to blow things off for the weekend and have some fun time alone. They asked him to submit a lie detector test, but he refused. Not long after that, Jana's Nissan Pathfinder was found far away from her home, abandoned and in a high-crime area. Inside was a single chilling clue, blood stain sitting in the trunk. And whose blood? It was Jana's, suggesting that they might not find her alive. The plot thickened as the prosecution built a case. The windows of that Pathfinder had curiously been left all the way down. Some further digging had witnesses in the area putting Bruce in that vehicle around the time of the disappearance, sitting alone. It was speculated then that he had planned this through, left the windows down in hopes that someone would see it as an easy steal, at which point, if they were ever caught, then they'd likely get blamed for the disappearance. Not a bad idea, except nobody took the bait. Financial motive, check there for Bruce. He stood to collect $1 million in life insurance money. Marital discord, check as well, because apparently they were having issues with how the business was being run. And Bruce wanted to be head of the company, and his wife was in the way. But for the prosecution, well, there was only one big problem: no body. Without a body, how could they prove murder? And the first trial ended in a mistrial, a hung jury. Jana's family wouldn't give up, and the prosecutors knew they needed a new approach, and so entered the visual trial 8 months later. They meticulously recreated the crime scene based on blood stains found inside the home, painting a picture, a horrifying picture, of what might have happened to Jana within the walls of their own home. And this time it worked, and fairly quickly the jury found Bruce guilty of second-degree murder. Lawyers have presented additional damning evidence, such as a note found on an older neighbor's car windshield from Bruce himself not long after his wife had vanished, asking her if she thought her granddaughter would be interested in going on a date with him, hardly the grieving husband. Bruce also saw himself as someday being a real estate-style mogul, and with that pictured himself with pretty young women swarming around him, a hard thing to do when the old ball and chain's around. As a result, he received a sentence of 15 years to life in prison. Homicide detective on the case, Karen Shanka, said, "He's an egotistical manipulator and thought he could charm his way out of this somehow. It just didn't work." Number 3, the Black Widower. Nevada native Thomas Randolph loved to live life in the fast lane. That rock star lifestyle, if you will, as evident by his long, flowing, blondish-gray colored mullet. Even though he never strummed a guitar or sang a song on stage, that didn't stop him from figuring an alternative route to making lots of money while chilling poolside. In his life so far, Thomas has been married 6 times in total, with 4 of his wives passing away under mysterious circumstances. The ones that did escape his wrath, well, they don't have the kindest words to say about him. Having one wife pass is tragic, of course, and two is even more depressing. But four, well, that raises some suspicions, which is fair. His first wife, Kathy, described him as a charismatic but troubled individual. Exciting to be around, but their 7-year marriage was marked by his infidelity and a decent amount of drug use. It was only a matter of time before things for them went south, and soon Kathy filed for divorce. The deadly pattern we're talking about started with the death of his second wife, Becky. And she too had gotten swept up into his world of fast living and drug use. And Thomas was a dealer on the side who had said he loved the thrill of making money doing things illegally, which is interesting considering the large amounts of life insurance money he picked up every time a wife passed away. And Becky would be discovered in November of 1986 in their bedroom, the victim of a gunshot wound, which was ruled to have been inflicted by Becky herself, though that would come into question. Because a year later, an acquaintance of the couple, Eric Tarantino, came forward to law enforcement saying that Thomas had asked him to assassinate Becky after he had just taken out a large life insurance policy on her.
And he just kind of threw it out there. Didn't look at me. He just, he went to start the truck and he goes, I want you to kill my wife. And then he looked at me. I want you to kill Becky. It's not an option. What? No. I mean, it was crazy. It was out of a horror movie. His face was stone. I'd never seen it like that. His eyes were like a shark. They were lifeless. He said, you know too much about what we do. You're going to do this, or I'm going to kill you.
That case would make its way to court, but ultimately Randolph was never found guilty of anything. But he still had that big stack of cash he was able to collect. And once he got a taste, well, there was no turning back. The deaths of his subsequent wives, while tragic, lacked the concrete evidence to convict Randolph. His third wife passed away due to cancer, and his fourth wife, Ganya Allman, was able to seemingly escape his wrath and divorce him, but not before a quote-unquote stray bullet from Randolph's gun that accidentally went off almost hit her. Felt like she was a target, and so she left him. Coincidentally, just before that bullet was fired, a large life insurance policy was taken out on her. His fifth wife then passed away due to a heart condition in the hospital, though many people, including her own daughter, think that Randolph had something to do with it. The law would finally catch up with Thomas with the mysterious death of his sixth wife, Sharon. The night Sharon died, Randolph claimed the pair had come home when they encountered a home intruder.
My wife's been shot and
is she awake?
No, she's shot in the head. I don't know for sure. I was going to try mount CPR.
Okay, put her
and the other
flat
guy
on her back.
I shot him.
Wait a minute, how many people are shot?
There's two. The guy that ran it out and her.
But Detective Dean O'Kelly, who was called to the scene, was skeptical from the jump, and for good reason. This intruder was a man named Mike Miller, a handyman who, as it turns out, had done work at the Randolph's house. Discrepancies in Randolph's story, his cold demeanor when talking about the night in question, coupled with the discovery of a life insurance policy naming him as the beneficiary, pointed to a more sinister plot. That he had hired Mike to murder his wife, just as he had tried to hire Eric Tarantino all those years back. Only this time, to make sure the hitman didn't snitch, he just took him out of the equation. Randolph faced trial for Sharon's murder. The prosecution showed that he used love as a weapon, manipulating women for financial gain. Despite a previous acquittal, this time the jury saw through Randolph's facade. And found guilty, Randolph was sentenced to prison. And while justice was served, the haunting question remains, how many lives did he claim before finally being held accountable? To this day, Randolph maintains his innocence, claiming the only reason he's been married so many times is because he's a hopeless romantic, and that doesn't make him a killer. Number 2. Is Scott Peterson innocent? Sometimes true crime stories take on a large life of their own for all sorts of reasons. The disappearance of Lacey Peterson back on Christmas Eve of 2002 is one of them. Many of us remember the headlines. and a stoic husband, Scott Peterson, the remains of Lacey and her unborn son found a year later in the San Francisco Bay Area, and Scott ultimately being sentenced to death for the crime.
Tonight, friends, family, and police are searching. They're posting flyers trying to find 26-year-old Lacey Peterson. She was last seen walking her golden retriever at nearby Dry Creek Park.
But did he actually do it? Well, the Los Angeles Innocence Project doesn't seem to think so. They've recently taken up his case, which they want retried. And, according to them, they never do this unless they have the DNA evidence to prove their client innocent. As the original story goes, Lacey stayed home the day she vanished, prepping the house for Christmas guests as she baked cookies, cleaned the house, and walked the dog. She was 7.5 months pregnant, so she was taking things slow. Her husband Scott had spent the morning fishing on his boat. When he got home, his wife was nowhere to be found. He called around to family and friends, spoke with neighbors, but no one had seen her. Lacey was then reported missing, and as police dug into Scott's background, well, they found he had been having an affair. 2, in fact, and may have been planning a divorce. Rather than pay alimony and child support, they suspected he killed his wife and unborn child to get rid of them. When Lacey's family, who had been supportive of Scott up to this point, heard of the affairs, they pulled back on all that, and so things were looking bleak for the man.
Since Scott is no longer communicating with anyone in Lacey's family, and because we have so many questions that he has not answered, I am no longer supporting him.
3.5 months later, in the San Francisco Bay, Lacey's body would be discovered on its shores. There was no physical evidence linking Scott, but by all accounts it appeared his fishing trip was something much more than just a recreational outing. That trial became a media frenzy, and the prosecution painted a picture of a cold-blooded killer, a man who discarded his wife like yesterday's news. The evidence, though circumstantial, seemed damning. A guilty verdict, relief, justice served, and everyone was happy. Or so we thought. But Scott Peterson never stopped proclaiming his innocence. Years rolled by, appeals denied, and the case seemingly closed. Till a flicker of hope recently. Enter the LA Innocence Project, as they believe they have new evidence that could shatter everything we thought we knew. The project claims a burglary occurred near the Peterson home around the time of Lacey's disappearance. A burned-out van was found nearby shortly after, allegedly containing a blood-stained mattress. Now this blood, and who it belongs to, could be the key to unlocking the truth. The LA Innocence Project also alleges witness statements were mishandled and potentially crucial leads ignored. The fight for a new trial is on, and Scott Peterson, a man who has spent over 2 decades behind bars, maintains his innocence. The question on everyone's mind, will this new evidence be enough to clear his name, or is it too late for the truth to set him free? Number 1, a ballet of lies and bullets. The Sunshine State of Florida, land of retirees, theme parks, and now the case of the Black Swan murder trial. Young Ashley Benfield had it all: beauty, talent, and a promising career in dance. And at age 24 in 2016, well, she met the love of her life in 54-year-old Doug Benfield. They were married just 13 days after they had met, so of course, with this whirlwind romance, well, they were destined to live happily ever after. They tried to start a ballroom dancing business, but unfortunately it didn't get off the ground, which left room for a little resentment among the pair. On top of that, while Ashley claimed Doug was controlling and even abusive, he in turn accused her of manipulation and digging into him for money. Their arguments became bitter, and their love story started to fall apart. Amidst all this, Ashley would become pregnant, but because of all the fighting, she headed to stay with her mom in South Carolina. And then, on a sweltering September night in 2020, the unthinkable happened. Ashley burst into her neighbor's house, a gun clenched in her trembling hand. "I shot my husband," she confessed, with tears streaming down her face. Doug was found at Ashley's home, mortally wounded. The Black Swan murder trial was born. According to the accounts, Doug had headed up to Ashley's mom's house, ready to finally make things right. There was a moving van in the driveway, half packed, and he was under the impression that they were going to move up to Maryland together to work things out. But as they were packing boxes, another fight broke out, and Doug became violent. He wouldn't let her leave the room, pushed her. That's when, out of sheer terror, she grabbed the handgun and fired 6 shots his way.
She's with me now, quite upset. The weapon is here. We need the police before her mother and the little girl gets back from the park. I don't want them to find it.
The prosecution painted Ashley as a cunning femme fatale, a black swan who used her beauty to lure Doug in before discarding him. And they pointed to inconsistencies in her story, the alleged threats, the bitter custody battle over their young daughter. And they claimed she had no intentions of moving to Maryland with him, and that she wanted to get rid of him once and for all. But Ashley's defense argued self-defense, and she claimed Doug was the aggressor, a predator who finally pushed her too far. The jury deliberated for days. Was Ashley a victim or the villain? The verdict came in, not murder but manslaughter. The jury believed Ashley felt threatened, but that her actions were excessive. And the Black Swan, once poised and graceful, had stumbled and fallen. The Black Swan murder trial may be over, but the questions linger. Was this a tragic case of self-defense or a cold-blooded murder disguised by a ballerina's tears? So there were the strange and scary mysteries of the month for August 2024. If you enjoyed this, please do remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you can know when we're putting out our new content. And for even more exclusive episodes and a whole library, consider supporting us over on Patreon. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.